Hi there, aspiring achievers. Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria, or RSD, is a hot topic these days. It's one manifestation of emotional dysregulation, which is a common but very misunderstood and certainly under-researched symptom of ADHD in adults. Individuals with RSD feel unbearable pain. Could be physical, could be emotional, or both, as a result of actual or perceived rejection, teasing, or criticism. And this symptom is not alleviated with cognitive or dialectical behavior therapy. I've read that this symptom is attributed to a different brain structure, a sensitivity that's different than just being a highly sensitive person. And as with the treatment of ADHD itself, medications such as ADHD meds or antidepressants are often given in the hopes that they will lessen the pain. A significant percentage of adults never find any effective way to manage or cope with the pain. So, what do adults do when they are in unbearable pain? What comes to mind is self-medicate the pain so that they can at least do what needs doing in their life. This could be drink, drug, spend, eat, you get the picture, to escape the pain. When I read about rejection, it appears to be the intentional act of refusing to accept, approve, or support someone or something, such as a refusal to show someone love or kindness, a refusal to accept someone. And this can even include ourselves. Rejection is the act of not giving someone the love and attention they want and/or expect.
Welcome to the Living Beyond ADHD podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow-through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Do you relate to being either the Elliot or the Rosemary in the following example? Elliot doesn't show love, acceptance, approval, or support for Rosemary in ways that mean that to her. She experiences unbearable emotional and/or physical pain because she feels rejected and feels that she's failed to be a person who can be loved and accepted by a person significant or important to her, in this case, Elliot. Since Rosemary is the one who has RSD, is it Elliot's responsibility to show love, acceptance, approval, and support for Rosemary no matter what? I'm really curious to know what you think. Due to the unbearable pain that Rosemary experiences, she becomes codependent and turns to people-pleasing behaviors to gain the love, acceptance, or approval that she's seeking from Elliot. Please note that Rosemary is seeking love, acceptance, and approval from outside herself with Elliot rather than from within herself because she believes it should be forthcoming and is separate from self-love and acceptance. As babies and young children, of course we need love, approval, acceptance, and support from our parents. We need this to survive. If we don't get this from them or someone else who's our caregiver, damage is caused to us emotionally, whether we have ADHD or not. We need this in the early years of life so that we're nourished by these human needs. As we get older and begin to mature, we need to learn to gain this love, acceptance, approval, and support from within ourselves rather than from others. Receiving it from others is a bonus. Receiving it from within is essential. Many of us never learn how to turn this need to something we meet for ourselves rather than get met from others. Because of this, and especially what I see in adults with ADHD that I work with, there is a high incidence of codependent behaviors and thinking, all focused on gaining the approval, acceptance, and support of others, at times no matter what it takes. In our marriages, we focus on pleasing our spouse or partner as a means of getting our needs met in the marriage. The faulty belief is that if they're pleased by what we do for them or how we're being for them, then they're going to meet our needs. This is an unspoken contract that's entered into with the expectation of getting our needs met if we meet the needs of the other person first. This is a faulty arrangement and typically doesn't work well. In our friendships, we think of the needs of our friends and not of our own, and we say yes when we should be saying no. We don't because we fear criticism or rejection, and we feel trapped into saying yes if we're asked to help with something. Friends may not expect a yes every time, but we think they do, and so we act accordingly. In our academic relationships, we do more work than asked for or expected, hoping to be seen as a good student and graded accordingly. We might even volunteer to help the professor in some way to score points in how we're perceived. In our work relationships, we work the crazy schedule and even overtime without pay because our employers wouldn't give us that amount of work that they do every day if it wasn't reasonable, and then we blame ourselves. We must be slow or less effective than other employees. What suffers most of all is our relationship with ourselves. We are so focused outside of ourselves on others that we never really get to know who we are. This is typically the quality of life that many of my students have been living before we work together. Since RSD is mood-related, some of you may be wondering how it differs from an actual mood disorder such as depression. I'll differentiate for you. RSD and ADHD. Mood changes always have a clear trigger. Moods match the perception of the trigger. Mood shift is instantaneous. Episodes end quickly in a matter of hours. Episodes rarely last more than a couple of hours. Mood disorder, like depression, typical symptoms, that is, mood changes are untriggered out of the blue. Moods are independent of what's going on in the person's life. Onset of a mood episode is gradual over a period of weeks to months, and the duration of the episode must be greater than 2 weeks to be considered this type of typical mood disorder. Mood disorders that are considered atypical. Mood changes are triggered. Moods are dependent on what's going on in the person's life. Onset of mood episode is sudden or instantaneous. Duration of episode can last indefinitely and not help that much by medications. It's a therapy and/or a skills solution. So as you can hear, RSD and atypical depression have very similar symptoms. For those of you who share your current challenges and goals with me and or set up a free call to discuss them, as well as what help is available for you, I'd say that emotional regulation is right there at the top. Many of you want to know how to become less sensitive or dysregulated. You tell me that you get triggered by people and situations regularly, and it's exhausting. You want to know how to stay on task and get stuff done when you're constantly getting derailed by how you feel. With regard to RSD, you're most likely deeply dissatisfied with yourself and what you've achieved thus far. You identify with my term gifted underachiever because you know that you would be capable of so much more if you could just resolve what gets in the way. I get it. Knowing that you can't outperform your beliefs or identity is why I focus on releasing your limiting beliefs and upgrading your outdated identity first thing in my program. So we clear away two areas that are most likely getting in your way and holding you back from achieving more. You may be thinking about bad events repeatedly and excessively, particularly experiences of real or perceived rejection, experiencing rejection when none is truly present, viewing minor rejections as disastrous, living with a persistent fear of rejection, afraid of constructive criticism. It calls for further information or impartial input because of all this misinterpreted information that gets interpreted as rejection. Codependent and living with perfectionism or people-pleasing characteristics and behaviors. Most professionals don't believe RSD is real and don't treat it. Whether or not it's real according to the DSM or not isn't the issue. It's real to the people who are suffering with it, suffering needlessly with it, and it needs to be addressed. What I see online for treatments are ADHD and antidepressant medications, therapy to reduce ruminating, improve time management, and reduce negative impulses, and accommodations at work or school for hypersensitivity. These recommendations don't seem to get to the underlying issues, especially because medications aren't for everyone, and accommodations still leave you with the issues, just reduces the frequency that they're going to be triggered. And therapy, CBT and DBT, is said to not be effective in alleviating RSD. What I don't see listed in any of the articles that I read was changing your identity, which is who you believe you are, from the inside out, a complete transformation, so that you actually shift who you know yourself to be and your behaviors and actions follow. You might be thinking, if it was this easy, Dr. B, wouldn't everybody be doing that to eliminate their RSD? It's a relatively simple process, yet takes commitment and guidance to make this shift. If everyone was willing to make the commitment and follow through on it to make this shift, then yes, they could shift their RSD. We spend a full week working on releasing limiting beliefs and upgrading our identities, and intermittently circle back during our 7 months together in GSD. I felt that way more time would be beneficial to work on what limits so many and gets in the way, which is why we most recently created that option that's available to you now. The Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime." My mission is to feed everyone for a lifetime, so we create a society of regulated humans rather than people always getting derailed by what they're feeling. I know it takes time, and yet the time is well worth it because the return is huge, and it's for a lifetime. As you probably know by now, if you're a regular listener to my podcast show, I believe that well-developed executive function skills, along with important pre-skills, is the answer to the dysregulation that many are experiencing. That said, if you've never had your executive function skills assessed, I highly recommend my free PDF, 13 Signs Weak Executive Functioning is Holding You Back. This is a good starting point to gain some insights into your level of development or deficit so that you can understand what's been holding you back and potentially dysregulating you. I use a more comprehensive executive function skill assessment for my students in my GSD program because I want to know more in-depth information with the students I work with. However, the free PDF I created is definitely a good starting place for everyone. You can grab your copy from my website, links in the show notes. If you've been listening to my podcast for any length of time, you know that I differentiate us as human beings and human doings. Society looks at us through the lens of human doings, and many of us have been indoctrinated to view ourselves as a human doing as well. We value ourselves based on what we can do or do, and when we can't do as many things due to executive function deficits, we don't feel very good about ourselves, and worse yet, may give up hope of life getting any better. Please don't give up hope. Rather, borrow mine until you've gained your own hope again, or maybe for the first time. Mine is real hope, not cheerleader hope. You are a precious child of the universe and are called a human being, not a human doing, for good reason. As a human being, you don't have to earn your value. You were born with it. Your value comes from who you're being, not what you're doing, which means if you focus on being the highest expression of what resides within you, you can wake up every day with your value 100%, 1,000%. You may still be developing your doing abilities, yet as a being, you are enough, more than enough. And that's a great win to celebrate every day of your life. And if you don't believe me, then please consider coming to work with me in some capacity so I can guide you and celebrate with you in all the amazing ways that are about you, the human being. That is, if it's your time. Speaking of wins, what's it going to be for you today? You focused on your self-care this week and are feeling great because of it? That's awesome. You set time aside for yourself every day? You even put it on your calendar? That's great. You've been clearing the clutter from your bedroom so your sleep is more restful? That's awesome. Congratulations on each and every one of your wins, big and small. They each deserve your wholehearted celebrating. Yes, wow, thank you. You are honoring yourself every day, and not many people do so. We all have daily wins, big and small, it doesn't matter, if we pay attention and we look for them, and I'm hopeful that you're celebrating them all. You deserve no less. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast episodes and transcripts. Great free content, plus information on programs and products, including the groundbreaking online Adventures in Achievement Foundational Skills Training and Coaching Program. You can also learn about Dr. B's masterclasses on decision-making, time management, and banishing procrastination. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
Continuing on with RSD, there is something important to note with regard to symptoms noted in the DSM-5 for adult ADHD, and that is they avoid mentioning symptoms that are associated with emotion, thinking styles, relationships, sleeping, and things like that, because these symptoms are just too hard to quantify. Yet these are the symptoms that are most bothersome to adults. The DSM-5 criteria is almost useless in that it ignores so much information that's vital to understand about how adults with ADHD experience life. And my understanding of medications for ADHD is that they target the three core defining areas of ADHD according to the DSM-5, which is inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and/or impulsivity, which isn't all the other stuff that isn't even included in the diagnostic symptoms, or so many other things that are. As far as I know, RSD is still being mostly ignored here in the US. However, it's a very different story in the European Union, where adult ADHD has been redefined with the addition of emotional regulation as a fundamental part of the criteria for diagnosis. One reason that RSD may not be included in the diagnostic criteria is that it isn't always present and comes in triggered episodes. Additionally, those with RSD are typically ashamed of their overreactions and tend to hide this information so as to reduce further shame or embarrassment. The EU definition of ADHD syndrome includes 6 areas: inattention and hyperfocus, impulsivity, hyperactivity, emotional dysregulation, excessive mind wandering, behavioral self-regulation, which they equated with executive function deficits. EU intentionally uses emotional dysregulation instead of RSD, feeling that it's more inclusive of the issues. And this information that follows comes from a 2013 study. I quote, "The type of emotional dysregulation seen in ADHD has been characterized as deficient self-regulation of emotional symptoms such as irritability, frustration, and anger, and low frustration tolerance, temper outbursts, emotional impulsivity, and mood lability. Emotional dysregulation in ADHD is different from episodic symptoms such as marked sustained irritability occurring within the context of altered mood states, such as an episode of extreme sadness or mania. In ADHD, emotional symptoms tend to reflect short-lived, exaggerated changes, often in response to daily events, with rapid return to baseline within a few hours," end quote. RSD is not a new concept. When I was first studying in the 1970s, I found Dr. Paul Wender's work. He spent 4 decades conducting the pioneering studies on ADHD beginning in the 1960s and was the first to recognize emotional dysregulation as a persistent, prevalent, and highly impairing component of what we now call ADHD. Medications are still being pushed as the answer, even though there's no clinical research to support this opinion. Some believe that RSD is neurological and not something that's due to a lack of skills. Skills do not come in pill form. Therefore, it's another reason to push pills versus skills. My perspective is obviously different because I found that developing the right skills in the right way solves many of the problems that are deemed unsolvable in the literature. If one needs emotional armor, many can create it without medication once they learn how. And once you learn how to deflect those incoming triggers, you can live without being wounded every single day. We are the meaning makers in our lives. And it's hard to imagine that with all the negative experiences that many of us have had growing up, and the mistakes that we've made and how people have reacted to us because we think differently about things, that we would be rejected by others, dismissed as inadequate, inappropriate, not to their liking. To me, to reject is more like not to their liking, meaning that those doing the rejecting didn't like my behavior. However, many take it as a rejection of self. They didn't like me, and I'm inadequate or inappropriate, not my behavior. How can they reject me if they don't know me, the person? They can reject me because of behavior, which is something they can see, but me? They can't see inside me and reject me. Growing up, we seek approval or acceptance from others, our parents, teachers, peers, and such. If we don't get it and instead we get rejection or perceived rejection, we start thinking of ways that we might get approval or acceptance from others, and this can lead to people-pleasing. We focus fully on others and not on ourselves. I have lived a life of service for most of my 72 years, and it fulfills me, helping hundreds of adults change themselves from the inside out so they can transform their limiting beliefs and outdated identities to empowering ones, eliminating challenges with regard to how they manage themselves in time and time itself, so it becomes a healthy partnership. Understanding the causes of procrastination and banishing those causes so things actually get done, and lighting the way to making decisions more easily that are known to be good decisions before they're ever acted on. It absolutely excites me. And that's only the fundamentals. Because I believe in teaching you to fish so you can feed yourself for a lifetime, I have further helped hundreds of adults to integrate the life skills for success so they can live the sustainable, successful life that they want and deserve. This is only possible through the elimination of these deficits, which means learning executive function skills rather than just being fed some tips or hacks or strategies as workarounds. I view those workarounds as Band-Aids that fall off in time, or we just stop using them because we have to consciously remember to use them. Who wants to do that? Instead, my students learn how to change themselves from the inside out, integrate all that they're developing, so they come to know that they can take care of themselves no matter what situation they're in. They have become the person who can do so. If you resonate with my approach and you want what others before you have received, I'm excited for you, and I would welcome the opportunity to speak with you about your current situation and what you're seeking so that we can determine together if what has worked for so many other adults would work for you as well. See the show notes for how to book that free call with me. I truly do want to hear about your current challenges and what you want instead, so we can discuss how that can happen for you. And if you're in our Facebook group, Living Beyond ADHD, you may have noticed that there's no longer any new activity there, or very little. Everything is happening outside of that group. The Transformation Club is the closest to what a Facebook training group can be. However, our group was never intended to be a training group. That's why TTC was created, so that you can have privacy, community, and quality training and support. And now you can book a call to find out if TTC is right for you. Whatever your needs, we've got you covered. Structure, support, community. From my perspective, the most important question to ask yourself here is, what have your deficits cost you up to now? And what will the further cost be if you don't do something about them now? If you live in the UK, and need what my GSD program offers you, but finances are an issue, there is a grant assistance program through Access to Work that just might provide the funding for the GSD program for you. It has for a number of my students. If you live in Australia or Ireland or other places, there may also be funding to help you access the GSD program. To learn more about what might be available to you if you live in those areas, check the page on my website, links in the show notes. And while you're waiting for grant assistance to come through, if this applies to you, consider coming into the Transformation Club to start your executive function skill transformation with other like-minded adults from around the world. Life is precious, and time even more so. We all get a certain amount of time here, and when that time is up, it's up. Are you living like you have all the time in the world? You don't. Time doesn't wait for us to be ready. It just keeps passing along. I learned a long time ago that my life won't wait forever for me to be ready to embrace it and live it to the fullest. If I want that life and want to live that way, I have to take action. Get ready now and live it. If you want an intentional life, you need to be intentional about what you bring into your life, to be 100% responsible for the life you create for yourself. Even if you have challenges in your life, there are solutions, and you can increase the quality of your life tremendously, especially if you develop your skills. If you resonate with what I'm sharing and my approach, and you'd like to benefit from more than just the podcast show, you have options now. The decision is yours to make. The years are going to pass no matter what you decide. It's really the choice of what you want to put into the years rather than them just being passing years filled with frustration and maybe regrets. You heard me earlier talking about the currency of time as our most precious asset, since it's not something we can ever get back. No matter how you spend your time, it's gone. And this is a huge price to pay for hesitation or indecision. If you need what I'm offering, I urge you to take action today and not do the typical, "That's nice, Dr. B, and I'll get around to it at some point, but just not right now." You have no time to waste. None of us do. If you aren't moving forward, you're sliding backwards because time does not stand still. So, here's my suggestions. Review the GSD program roadmap, watch the free training video, then book a complimentary call with me to get your questions answered, or look at the TTC roadmap if GSD isn't for you at this time. Watch that free training video and book a complimentary call to ask questions about TTC if you have any. Do something to move forward. Take some positive action today. The doors to the opportunities in our lifetime don't stay open forever. I say this because I've waited in the past and doors have closed that I wish could open up again, and they can't. I live a life of service and want to be of service to you in some capacity, which is why I share all this with you. You came to this lifetime with an empowering gift, maybe many of them. And I would love it if each and every person on this planet were able to express his or her unique, empowering gifts freely, without the threat of being shamed or criticized. Let's put an end to the stigma once and for all and live full out as empowered achievers. A favorite quote of mine. Buckminster Fuller said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. I love this quote and learned this years ago. It's why I'm consistently upgrading myself by building a new model of me, then taking the best from the current version of me into the new version and building out from there. It's fun and it works. If you found value in this podcast episode, please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. Our mission is to help as many people as possible transform their lives. And when you leave a positive review, more people can find this podcast. Just click where it says review, select ratings and reviews, and write a review and tell me what your favorite part of the podcast is. Thank you so much. If you're loving the podcast and you'd like to work with me, you'll find all the transformational opportunities listed in the show notes. Personal transformation is available to everyone who seeks it. We have made sure that there is an opportunity to fit a variety of needs. There are real solutions to the challenges that you're experiencing, so please reach out to us. There's a lot of misinformation out and about. Be mindful and intentional with your decisions. Time is your most precious asset, and your life won't wait forever. I would love to help you realize a new freedom. That is, if that's of interest to you. Thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you're eager to make positive changes in your life and stop overwhelm and confusion from derailing you, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love learning in an online group environment with personalized coaching or prefer the pace of guided self-study, Dr. B offers the skills, strategies, and individual support you need. Get started on your journey today by visiting the website at drbarbaracohen.com.